In 1854, a luxury steamship left Liverpool, packed with passengers bound for New York. Days later, it was gone. What happened in the fog that morning? Why did no one save the women and children? And how did the men who made it back walk free without ever explaining what they did? This isn't a shipwreck story with answers. It's one with questions no one wanted to ask. In the mid-1800s, steamships weren't just transportation. They were national pride made of iron and wood. At the time, Britain dominated the seas with its Cunard Line, but America wanted in. The Collins Line was born, promising faster, grander, and more luxurious ships. And at the front of that fleet was the SS Arctic. She was sleek, powerful, gilded in mahogany and velvet, a floating palace built to outrun and outshine the British. Newspapers called her the Pride of the Atlantic. Her dining rooms could host senators and kings. Her engines could outrun a storm. But beneath all that polish was something no one talked about. Lifeboats for only a fraction of those on board. A silent gamble taken on every crossing. In 1854, the Arctic made that gamble again. This time, it wouldn't pay off. September 27th, 1854. The Arctic is 4 days out from Liverpool, somewhere off the coast of Newfoundland. The fog rolls in thick and fast, blinding, smothering, and quiet. At 11 a.m., a dark shape looms out of the haze. It's the French iron-hulled steamer Vesta, smaller, slower, and built like a battering ram. The collision is sudden. The Arctic's wooden hull is torn open, water floods in fast. The Vesta barely survives. At first, Captain Luce believes his ship is stronger, still afloat, still steaming. He turns back toward land, but below deck, the Arctic is dying. The engine rooms are filling, the ship is listing, and there are no lifeboats ready for 400 souls. The crew begins to panic. With the Arctic sinking fast, chaos erupts on deck. There are lifeboats, but not nearly enough. And what happens next would stain the Arctic's name forever. The crew abandons their posts. Lifeboats are launched half empty. Officers ignore the passengers. Men, strong, able-bodied, push past women and children to save themselves. Captain Luce tries to rally order, but it's too late. One boat even refuses to return for survivors. Of the nearly 400 people aboard, only 88 survive. Not a single woman, not one child. When the survivors finally reach shore, they say nothing. There are no public hearings, no inquiry, no punishment. The Arctic's disaster is buried beneath pride and silence. In the weeks that followed, the survivors returned to the United States quietly. There were no welcome parades, no interviews, no inquiries. Captain Luce, one of the few who didn't abandon ship, survived by clinging to a piece of wreckage for 50 hours. He gave his account. The rest said almost nothing. Officers and crew refused to testify. The Collins Line offered no explanation. No official investigation was ever held. There were editorials, outrage, and grief, but then nothing. The shipping industry closed ranks, the government looked the other way, and the Arctic slipped from headlines into history, unpunished and unexplained. The Arctic sank somewhere off Newfoundland. Its exact resting place has never been found. There was no wreckage to examine, no bodies to recover, and no monument erected, not for decades. The Collins Line quietly continued service until it collapsed a few years later. The story of the Arctic faded with it, but its legacy lingered, quietly and bitterly. The press called it a national disgrace, not because the ship sank, but because no one answered for it. The Arctic disaster helped ignite the first serious conversations about maritime safety, lifeboat standards, crew responsibility, and passenger protections. Still, those changes came slowly and only after other tragedies piled up. Today, the Arctic is rarely mentioned. No Titanic-style documentaries, no museum centerpiece, just a name on a list. A ship built to challenge British supremacy, remembered, if at all, for what it failed to do. We remember the Titanic. We debate the Lusitania, but the Arctic? We barely whisper its name. Why did the survivors never speak publicly? Why were no formal hearings ever held? And what would we have learned if someone had dared to ask the hard questions back then? Maybe the Arctic wasn't just a maritime disaster. Maybe it was something worse, a test of character that no one passed. And somewhere out there, beneath the cold Atlantic, the Arctic still lies, questions unanswered. Want more stories of ancient ships, lost cargoes, and vanished worlds? Subscribe to Shipwrecked History, because the past still whispers if you dive deep enough.